Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome. Today's topic is Resalest Remarkable Books, number 77. The first book today is Diego Silang, David Routledge, 1979. Diego Silang is considered a hero from Philippine history, and he's one of the guys who rebelled against the Spanish during the Spanish rule of the Philippines from 1565 to 1898. And the thing is, the Philippines, before the Spanish came, was not one country. It was, you could say, many small countries in an archipelago. And each of these little countries and ethnic groups had their own interests and often were at war with each other. And the Spanish, this is true all over the world, I think, and the Spanish used those divisions to actually conquer the country. And so Filipinos were not a Filipino people. And so they were divided. In fact, during the Spanish era, the Spanish army usually was mostly Filipinos, who would be fighting Filipinos. Now, what Diego Silang did, he was the first Filipino to unite several ethnic groups together to fight the Spanish, which was necessary. As long as they were divided, they could never defeat the Spanish. This is what he did. So this is why he's a great man. And this is in northern Luzon Island, I believe, in the Ilocos region. So this is the first. That's why he's known. And this was in the 1700s, around 1763. So and he was betrayed by two of his friends. Very tragic. Pedro Becbec and Miguel Vicos. He was murdered by them. Terrible. What can be worse than that? And I had this intuition, which may or not have been true, that I had been Pedro Becbec in a past life, and so I thought, oh wow, I betrayed this guy, and eventually, when I had depression, I felt really bad about it. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm a villain from Philippine history. But the thing is, I do believe in reincarnation, God blesses us because we don't remember our past. We shouldn't. There's no point in trying to figure out who we were in past lives. We need to focus on today and what we can do today. And I hope during my 20 years in the Philippines and maybe more in the future that I was able to do some good there, or wherever we are, we need to do good. So Diego Silang, this Philippine hero, very tragic, but he, there was nothing worse than betraying a friend, which is what they did. And it was, the Catholic Church actually encouraged it because they were. They believed that this rebellion by Diego Silang, they were part of they were Spanish, so they were pro-Spanish. So this is really something, and we need to be loyal to our friends. Loyalty is so important, and nothing worse than to betray. The next book is The Road to Ruin, the global elite's secret plan for the next financial crisis by James Rickards, 2016. Very interesting book. The author is a financial analyst, and he is predicting a financial catastrophe very soon. Well, it's 2018, so it hasn't happened yet. He talks a little bit of history. Woodrow Wilson and Franklin D. Roosevelt, U.S. presidents in the early part of Woodrow Wilson elected in 1920, elected in 1912, served from 1913 to 1921, and Franklin D. Roosevelt elected in 1932. Served from 33 to 45. So he calls them fascists. That they were not good. That they increased the power of the government, and we're still on that long trend as the federal government in the United States has continued to grow. So he talks about greed, debt, growing income inequality, and so you never know the future is unknown. So I think the main thing is spirituality, and what are you going to do? There's lots of speculation about future catastrophe, whether it's nuclear war or in this case a financial catastrophe, where the economy falls apart and there's all these businesses go out of business and people lose their jobs and so forth, and then we're all in big trouble. So the answers to all these problems, I believe, are spiritual. To prepare for this and hopefully possibly to prevent something like this from happening, because it's all based on, I think, problems in human character that lead to financial catastrophes. The next book is Suleiman the Magnificent, by Andre Klot, 1989. Wow, this Suleiman the Magnificent was considered the greatest sultan of the Ottoman Empire. A sultan is another word for king, and he was an emperor. In the 1500s, it was the largest empire in the world, the Ottoman Empire, which the main part was ruled by ethnic Turks, included, what's now Turkey, actually almost, I think, the entire Balkan Peninsula, which is this very unknown peninsula. It's the largest and fattest unknown peninsula east of Italy that has these, the bottom part is Greece, so you have countries like Romania, Hungary, former Yugoslavia, Albania, and so forth. And also in the Ottoman Empire, much of the Middle East, including the Arabian Peninsula and North Africa and into Central Asia. The Turks were, their empire was growing and growing, but they were stopped in Vienna, Austria, partly because it was so far from Istanbul, and they couldn't stay the winter. The sieges were short. They didn't have much time to attack Istanbul because they couldn't spend the winter. They had to go home. Suleiman is Turkish for Solomon, which is actually a name from the Old Testament, the great king of ancient Israel. He was dedicated to the welfare of his people. He was a good man. However, bad sultans became very problematic. I had a student when I taught in Switzerland. He was Turkish, Emre Ake, who was enthusiastic about, I remember him mentioning Suleiman the Magnificent. But the thing is, people need to work. They can't sit around reading books about Suleiman the Magnificent all day. Anyway, a great leader of the Turkish Ottoman Empire. I think he's still revered by Turks today as a great Muslim Turkish leader, Suleiman the Magnificent. And the fascinating Turkish Empire, which had so many ethnic groups, the Turks, Greeks, Jewish people, as I said, the different Balkan peoples and Arabs. So it's a very, very interesting story. And this guy who was a very good leader in that Ottoman Empire, Suleiman the Magnificent. The next book is The Prison Angel, Mother Antonia's Journey from Beverly Hills to a Life of Service in a Mexican Jail by Mary Jordan and Kevin Sullivan, 2005. Wow, what a book. This American woman found happiness as an older woman in a grim prison in Tijuana, Mexico, comforting those poor men, convicts there. This book was inspiring, really inspired me in it to pursue my dream of working at the elderly. I ended up getting a job for 6 months here in Rocky River at the Welsh home, although I eventually quit because I found the job too difficult physically, in all aspects, physically, mentally, and emotionally. But there's a great need for helping the elderly. Now, in this case, this woman, this is such an incredible story because she went to this very tough environment. I don't know how she found her way there. She actually, she was Catholic, and she lived her life. She was married and raised a family. I think she had 5 children, and they had all grown up. I think the youngest one was actually in high school, and when she ended up going to this prison and found these men. They were really pathetic. It was a very barbaric environment, very violent. The prison guards would mistreat these men. And so they were just starving for kindness, and that's what she provided. She decided, and she ended up moving there, and what she did was ended up founding a Catholic order of nuns. The thing she realized is that for women, Catholic women who want to become a nun, that mostly it's young women who get involved in this, and because the older women, these different Catholic orders for nuns, they don't want to take older women because of medical expenses as they go in their old age, and they find it's too expensive for them. So she decided to do this for older women, and it's still apparently operating. She has died now. But the thing that inspired me, she went into a very, very tough environment, physically very poor, very crowded, and these poor guys being mistreated. They all came from very poor backgrounds, and then they were really being treated very poorly. And so she went there, and I know at one point there was a riot that she was able to stop because everyone, really loved her and trusted her, and so she did an awful lot of good. This is an incredible, and she found happiness. That's the main thing. A lot of people think, oh my God, I would never go to a place like that, because it was, in a third world country, very poor country, and in a prison with these. But she was from a wealthy background, and in California, lived in Beverly Hills, this wealthy suburb of Los Angeles. And she went to this very, very tough environment, but she found happiness. She found happiness, and to me, that's what's inspiring about it. It's an incredible story. And that even though the environment was bad, but there was a need to fill, and she was fulfilling that need. She provided service. And these poor men, they were so grateful. And they responded. They loved her. That's why it's called The Prison Angel. What an incredible story, and very, very, really wonderful, inspiring, because this is what I believe we need to do. God needs us to serve and to do good in this world. And I was thinking, like in the United States, you have these nursing homes where the elderly are they're just starving for love, and very often they're not treated well. They're mistreated. These aides are overworked, underpaid, and we don't understand the importance of, the thing is, we don't seem to understand, the human race, the importance of being kind to each other, especially people who are in their hour of need. In this case, these men in prison. In other cases, the elderly who are at the end of their lives. So really, I can't recommend. This is one of the best books I ever read, The Prison Angel. The next book is No Woman, No Cry, My Life with Bob Marley by Rita Marley with Hetty Jones, 2004. It's a very interesting book. The author is it's the story of the widow of the famous reggae musician Bob Marley. She tells their story. Poverty in Trenchtown, which was like a very poor neighborhood, I believe, in Kingston, Jamaica, in the Caribbean, making music with Bob Marley. Reggae is this style of music which originated in Jamaica, and Bob Marley was the most famous. He's long gone. He died at age 36 in 1981, I believe. And but he was from a poor background. He became very famous and wealthy. The thing that was tragic is that he was a womanizer, which was no good. And actually, it's terrible. Actually, his death was really unnecessary. He was playing soccer. He had a wound in his foot that he did not get. He did not get medical care. He just ignored it. And then when it finally came time to do something, they said, "Man, we got to cut off your foot," and he wouldn't do it. It was a toe injury playing soccer, and then eventually he died, completely unnecessary. Now the title of the book, No Woman, No Cry, that comes from one of his songs, and what I never knew is it actually means no, woman, don't cry. Apparently, in this story, there's a woman crying, and the guy is saying, "No woman, no cry, or don't cry." The book talks about the Rastafarian religion, which was developed in Jamaica and which is promoted in reggae songs, reggae music, which involved African pride and, unfortunately, the use of marijuana. This book, she had a lot of hardships in life. She was a very determined woman, very persistent, very strong woman. In fact, when Bob Marley died, these other guys were trying to take. There's still money being made from his music. And she had a real battle fighting different individuals. I think Bunny Wailer, other musicians who wanted to basically get all the income from Bob Marley's music. And she's still alive, as far as I know. Still, she's in the music business herself. I believe she herself is a reggae musician. So if you're interested in the story of Bob Marley, this book is all about it, and it's very interesting. Really enjoyed this book. The next book is Ivan the Terrible by Robert Payne and Nikita Romanov, 1975. Wow, what a book. Ivan was definitely terrible. He was the Tsar or King of Russia in the 1500s. So this is going back, about 500 years. And he saw enemies everywhere. He murdered a lot of people. He killed 1/3 of the people of Novgorod in Russia. The city of Pskov, Pskov, was saved because a holy man defied Ivan, told him he was evil, and damned, and Ivan left the city untouched. It's hard to believe when you read this history book, the Russian people's passivity. He was kind of like Joseph Stalin, a mass murderer. Yeah, this guy was completely crazy. He was paranoid. He would decide, like, for example, he decided that the people of Novgorod were all traitors and they were all against him. So what he would do in this case, he went to Novgorod and decided he started killing people. And after, with the Russian army, and he killed about a third of the people when I guess he finally got tired and decided to move on. And then he decided that the city of Pskov, Pskov, again, was full of traitors and enemies of Ivan who were out to get him or were going to try to kill him. So he entered the city and he was going to start doing the same thing, start killing people. And what was inspiring, he met this holy man who was a saint. And I wish I don't have the name of that guy, but this holy man. See, the thing is with Ivan, everyone was afraid of him. They feared him, they hated him, but they didn't do anything. Nobody fought back. And except he met this holy man who said, you're terrible. You're doing you're evil. You're damned. You're going to pay for this. This is what you're doing is really, really bad. And there's God's justice. So he yelled at Ivan. He defied him. And Ivan, because of this defiance by this saint, Ivan left Pskov was saved. The city was saved. It shows the power of spirituality, the power of God. And all the people who tried to, appease Ivan and and try to please him and so forth, ultimately it didn't work. It didn't stop him. And so it shows that, yes, we need to be kind in life, but sometimes you have to stand up to evil, and you have to say no, and you say, and have courage, because that's really the quality that this saint had, which stopped Ivan from destroying Pskov. Ivan the Terrible, who was the inspiration for Joseph Stalin. So this is really something. He really was. He definitely deserves the name Ivan the Terrible. The next leader is Dear Leader, Poet, Spy, Escapee, A Look Inside North Korea by Jang Jin Sung, 2014. This is a tremendous book. The author was an insider in the top government of North Korea. And he fled North Korea when he lost a book of Western literature, which was apparently very restricted. And he thought, oh my God, I'm going to get in big trouble. The common people of North Korea, they can't have books unless it's government books approved by the government, actually written by the government. So the author, he thought, I've got to get out of North Korea. I'm going to get arrested because he lost this book. And if they'd find out about it, they think, he's a threat to the government or he's plotting against the government. So he left North Korea. He made his way into China, crossed the border into China with a friend, had a long ordeal in China before finally reaching safety in the South Korean embassy in Beijing. Apparently, he applied for asylum, and he made it. It wasn't easy. It was a pretty tough situation because he could have been. The thing is, the Chinese are arresting North Koreans and sending them back to North Korea. So that could very, very easily have happened to him. Now, he makes a claim in this book that Kim Jong-il, who is actually the former leader, the father of Kim Jong-un, who is the current leader, that Kim Jong-il seized power from his father, the founder of North Korea, Kim Il-sung, while the latter was elderly. And, of course, this apparently, it's hard to know the history of North Korea because the information is so tightly controlled. As I said, many North Koreans are arrested in China and sent back to North Korea. This is shame on the Chinese government for doing this. But actually, shame on the Chinese government for their support of North Korea, because the North Korean government would fall today without support from the Chinese government. The Chinese government wants the North Korean government to remain in power for their own reasons, because since there's conflict between China and the U.S. and they shouldn't be doing this. This is horrible because the people of North Korea are probably the most suffering people in the world. But the other thing that's inspiring are North Koreans who learn about Christianity from missionaries in China who actually risk their lives. They make their way back into North Korea, a lot of them. They want to go back to help. So this is a country that it's very interesting. It's very tragic the suffering of the North Korean people in the since, in the Korean War back in the 50s. And actually, they're such a tragic country. They were a colony of Japan from 1910 to 1945, 35 years, and they were not treated well by the Japanese. And then the Korean War in the 50s, and then the division of Korea, has been divided ever since the 50s, North and South Korea. So it's really a very interesting topic, very important. We need to know what's going on in the world. Really, really enjoyed this book. The next book is 48 Minutes, A Night in the Life of the NBA by Bob Ryan and Terry Pluto, 1987. It's a good book. This book is about one NBA game between the Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers on January 16th, 1987. The players included Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, Danny Ainge, Brad Daugherty, Larry Nance, Hot Rod Williams, Ron Harper, and Craig Elo. Played at the Boston Garden. The Celtics won the game, a tough game, in overtime. So the author gets into all the details of one NBA game, and I guess he interviewed players afterward and tried to put it all together, what happened in the game. Very interesting. The next book is Inside the Kingdom, My Life in Saudi Arabia by Carmen Bin Laden, 2004. This is a tremendous book. The author is this woman who had her father was from Switzerland, her mother was Iranian from Iran, and she grew up in Switzerland. And she married Yeslam bin Laden and into the powerful and wealthy bin Laden family. Osama bin Laden was her brother-in-law. She struggled with the very restricted life women face in Saudi Arabia, very limited, because she had actually grown up in Switzerland, where women, have equal rights. Ultimately, she and her husband divorced, and she was able to live with her 3 daughters in Switzerland. She calls the Saudis Taliban in their luxury, the same beliefs. She has a dim view of Saudi culture, and which is very intolerant. Yeah, so this is an inside story of what life is like in Saudi Arabia. And the thing that's, I think, the most troubling is how hard it is for women. How they have to stay at home, and when they go out, they have to wear this very drab clothing. And they're in a very wealthy country. They have all this money, and they buy these women buy these expensive clothes, and then even Western clothes and sexy clothes, and they wear them at home, I guess, with each other, and just that's all they can do. And of course, the way the men, the men aren't treating the women well, and so it's really tragic. And the Saudis were a simple desert people, very poor, and then they've been drastically changed by oil wealth just in the 20th century. Now they have all this money, and then they're promoting their ideas that the whole world should be Muslim, and they're really sort of anti-Western, you could say, anti-democratic, and anti-religious freedom. In fact, you can't. It's illegal to have a Christian Bible in Saudi Arabia. And I think up until now, women can't drive automobiles. So she married into the bin Laden family. She met Osama bin Laden, of course, and so it's really interesting. It's good to learn about these different countries in the world, and this one's about Saudi Arabia and what life is like there. The next book is End the Fed by Ron Paul, 2009. This is a tremendous book. It's similar to the book The Creature from Jekyll Island. Ron Paul this is about the United States, describes the Federal Reserve as the center of our corrupt banking system, which devalues money, promotes war, and wastes money. Good job, Ron. His call to action has not been heeded so far. The Federal Reserve, as far as I can tell, was created, I think back around 1920, a little earlier. And it was actually to prevent competition, it was created for the benefit of big bankers. And they fooled the public then, and the public are still fooled today, that the Federal Reserve supposedly is serving the public, the greater good, and it is not. It is not. And so that's why the title of this book, End the Fed, which he believes is a corrupt organization. Well, it's part of the government, and it controls banking in the United States, and he's saying it's not doing a good job. It is not serving the American people because we have inflation, It's actually has been blowing money in terms of lending money, and it's very interesting because and a lot of people, they're not that interested. And so up till now, this is an ongoing issue, and not enough people know this so that we could have change happen. The next book is Control, Exposing the Truth About Guns by Glenn Beck, 2013. Another tremendous book. Glenn Beck is my political hero. He discusses the issue of gun violence and gun control. He takes the position that if good people have guns, they can fight back against bad guys to protect themselves and their families, and stop bad guys with guns going on a rampage. Gun control takes guns away from good people and empowers criminals. This is his belief that kind of like they tried to make different drugs illegal. Cocaine is illegal in the United States. There's been a war on drugs, but that hasn't stopped cocaine from being around. And so they whenever there's a school shooting or a mass shooting, then the liberals say, "Oh, we need gun control. This is why." And he says, this isn't gonna. The government can't really take guns away from bad guys. They can make it hard for good people to have guns. So if you're in your home at night and somebody breaks in, and then you don't have a gun, you can't, because they've made it hard for you to have one. And what are you going to do? Got criminals in your home. But actually, I agree with Glenn Beck. But beyond his opinions, we need a spiritual change. And I think just like that story of Ivan the Terrible and the saint who stopped him. He wasn't stopped. Ivan the Terrible wasn't stopped because the people of Pskov, defended themselves militarily, although that might have been a good idea. But no, spiritual power is another form of power, and we can. I think ultimately the way to fight crime is through spirituality. Although I understand his position, and like they said, if you have a guy who's going on a rampage with a gun, how are you going to stop him if the good people don't have guns and he's just killing people? So it's an ongoing topic. Conservatives are against gun control because for this reason they agree with Glenn Beck. Liberals are for it because they think, oh, this is terrible. We can stop this violence through government action. The next book is Heretic, Why Islam Needs a Reformation Now by Ayaan Hirsi Ali, 2015. It's a really good book. The author argues that violence is rooted in the Quran and Muhammad's life, and today's Islamic jihad and Muslim terrorism are connected to this. She argues that Muslims need to embrace the peaceful portions of the Quran. She favors a Muslim reformation involving respect and equal rights for women, religious freedom for Muslims, and Muslim respect for other religions so we can have a peaceful world. Very brave woman. The author is from Somalia and East Africa. She's become a leader in the anti-Islamic jihad movement, and she knows firsthand. She lived in this culture, and so it's very interesting. She wrote another book called Heretic. Well, I can't remember the name. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. It appears we are out of time. Hope you find a good book to read on history or anything else, because there's so many amazing books out there, and hope you can find one that you enjoy. Thanks for watching. God bless you. Take care, and I'll see you next time.